Welcome to True Ghost Stories. If you're fascinated by unexplained encounters, haunted places, forgotten legends, and chilling stories inspired by ghost folklore from around the world, you've come to the right place. Every week, we bring you cinematic horror stories filled with mystery, suspense, and the unknown. Dim the lights, put on your headphones, and step into a world where every shadow hides a secret. If you enjoy atmospheric storytelling and psychological horror, make sure to subscribe to True Ghost Stories, turn on notifications, and join thousands of viewers who love exploring the world's most unsettling tales. Now, take a deep breath, turn up the volume, and let's begin tonight's story. The Woman Who Knocked 3 Times. There are stories that stay with you, not because they're violent, not because they're impossible to explain, but because they leave you wondering, what if they were true? Tonight's story is inspired by ghost folklore and mysterious roadside legends shared across rural Vietnam. Whether you believe in spirits or not, I'll let you decide. In the fall of 2025, a man named Min was driving home after what had easily become the longest workday of his career. He was 32 years old, a sales representative, the kind of person who spent more time on the road than at home. That day alone, he had driven hundreds of miles, visiting customers in small towns scattered across central Vietnam. By the time the sun disappeared behind the mountains, heavy rain had swallowed the highway. His windshield wipers could barely keep up. His fuel gauge was almost empty. His phone battery had dropped below 5%. Stopping wasn't part of the plan, but nature had already made the decision for him. Then, through the curtain of rain, he saw it. An old roadside motel. A weathered sign stood beside the entrance. Hoa San Motel. It wasn't abandoned, but it didn't feel alive either. Only 2 windows were lit. Everything else disappeared into darkness. Min parked his car and stepped inside. Behind the reception desk sat an elderly woman. She smiled kindly, introduced herself as Mrs. Lan, checked him in without asking many questions. Then she handed him a brass key. Room number 7. As he turned to walk away, she quietly said something that made him pause. If someone knocks on your door after midnight, don't answer. Min smiled politely. He had traveled for years. Every town had its own ghost story. This one, he assumed, was no different. He carried his bags upstairs. The hallway smelled faintly of old wood and rain. Room 7 was simple: a bed, a desk, a wooden wardrobe, nothing unusual. After taking a shower, Min sat at the desk and opened his laptop. Outside, rain continued to fall. Inside, the motel was completely silent. No televisions, no conversations, no footsteps, just silence. At exactly midnight, 3 knocks echoed through the room. Knock, knock, knock. Not loud, not aggressive, just 3 slow knocks, evenly spaced, as though whoever stood outside knew exactly how long to wait between each one. Min looked toward the door. He waited. Nothing happened. Thinking another guest had mistaken his room, he walked over and looked through the peephole. No one. The hallway was empty. Curiosity won. He unlocked the door. The old hinges creaked softly. The corridor stretched beneath flickering yellow lights. At the very end, someone was standing there. A young woman. She wore a traditional white Vietnamese áo dai. Her long black hair reached almost to her waist. She wasn't moving. She wasn't looking at him. She simply stood there, perfectly still. "Excuse me," Min called. No answer. He took one careful step forward, then another. He blinked. She was gone. Not walking away, not hiding. Gone. The hallway was empty again. There were no open doors, no sound of footsteps, nothing. Min searched every corner before returning to his room. He slept very little that night. The next morning, over breakfast, he casually asked Mrs. Lan if another guest had been staying at the motel. Specifically, a young woman wearing a white áo dai. Mrs. Lan didn't answer right away. Her smile slowly disappeared. After several seconds, she shook her head. "You were the only guest." The answer should have ended the conversation. Instead, it made everything worse. Before leaving, Min checked the dashcam footage from the previous evening. At first, everything looked normal. Rain, the empty road, the motel. Then, his car headlights swept across the parking lot. Standing beneath a large tree was a woman wearing white, watching his car arrive. Min froze. He had absolutely no memory of seeing her. Later that afternoon, a landslide blocked the highway. Police closed the road until morning. Reluctantly, he returned to Hoa San Motel, back to room 7. This time, he promised himself he would stay awake. Midnight arrived. Knock, knock, knock. The same 3 knocks, only louder. Min didn't move. The knocking stopped. A few seconds later, footsteps, slow, deliberate, walking down the hallway. They stopped directly outside his room. Silence. Then, a soft sound, almost like breathing. Right outside the door, he looked through the peephole. Nothing. The hallway was empty. Again, suddenly, the room became ice cold. The lights flickered once. The clock on the wall stopped. 12, the next morning. Mrs. Lan finally told him the truth. More than 20 years earlier, her daughter Huong had been a primary school teacher. Every day she walked home wearing a white ao dai. One rainy evening, while crossing the road in front of the motel, she was struck by a speeding truck. She never survived. Since that night, travelers had reported seeing the same young woman standing quietly at the end of the hallway, always after midnight, always wearing white. Some heard 3 knocks, others only saw her watching from a distance, but one detail never changed. No one had ever been harmed. Mrs. Lan believed her daughter wasn't trying to scare people. She believed Huang was trying to protect them. On Min's final night, the knocking came once more. This time, he opened the door. The young woman stood only a few feet away. She wasn't frightening. Her face looked peaceful, almost sad. She smiled gently. Then, without saying a word, she slowly raised one hand and pointed toward the parking lot. A moment later, she disappeared. The following morning, Min walked outside. A massive steel beam had collapsed from the motel roof during the storm. It had landed exactly where the driver's seat of his car had been parked. If he had left during the night, he almost certainly wouldn't have survived. For a long time, Min stood there without saying a single word. Maybe every knock had never been a warning to stay inside. Maybe it had been a warning not to leave. Even today, people living near that old highway still tell the same story. They say room number 7 is just another motel room until midnight, because if you ever hear 3 slow knocks on the other side of your door, you have to make a choice. Open it or pretend you never heard anything at all. What would you do? Thank you for joining me on this journey into the mysterious. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the True Ghost Stories channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next chilling tale. Remember, not every ghost story ends when the lights come back on. Some stories stay with you long after the video ends. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and if you find yourself alone after midnight, think twice before opening the door. Good night, and I'll see you in the next story.